Hi, guys. Welcome to the Church Split. My name is Will, and today we're talking about Capturing Christianity, Cameron Bertuzzi, Jay Dyer, Dr. Trent Doherty, and all the other insanity. But first, don't forget to like and subscribe, all that. If you want to support this on Patreon, that would be great, because with videos like what I'm about to do, it won't make me popular, but I still think it'll make me right, I guess. Let's do this thing, guys. We're just going to, I guess, burn this thing down to the ground. So, recently, Capture Christianity hosted a debate between Jay Dyer with an Orthodox priest and then Dr. Trent Doherty with another Catholic person on debating the conversation on whether or not Christian and Muslims worship the same God. And of course, if you're a thinking person whatsoever, the obvious answer is no. Okay, end of stream, guys. Thanks, like and subscribe. See you later. Just kidding. I really wish it was that simple. Because apparently the obvious thing is not so obvious. And the very fact that this is actually even debated in the first place is troublesome to me by Christians. And the fact that someone like Cameron Bertuzzi is even defending this position is also troubling, to say the least. So we're going to go ahead and get into this, but I would argue that to say that Christians and Muslims worship the same God is not only blasphemous drivel, as it says on this thumbnail, but is actually dangerous. It can lead people astray. And it starts to focus on, it's emphasizing too much on similarities and not enough on the extremely stark differences between the two. Islam is nothing like Christianity, and therefore they do not worship the same God. Just because the word Allah could be used similarly to Elohim, which is a general term for God, does not suddenly make it worshiping the same God. Just because it comes from Abrahamic religions does not mean it's the same God. Just because it presents itself as a continuation of the biblical narrative does not mean it is the same God. And if you watch the Catholics actually debate this, and we're going to look at some of this stuff here in a minute, but if you look at the Catholics actually debate this on Cameron's channel at Capturing Christianity, you'll see that they're like, oh, well, we don't think that Mormons worship the same God, even though Mormons believe that they're a continuation of those things. They try to get creative on their little categorical differences. And basically, if you watch that debate, is basically Orthodox bros destroy Muslims. It's pretty much all it is. So this right here is just going to be absolutely ridiculous. So, all right, well, first and foremost, in that debate, there is some of the most unhinged stuff. And this is one of the things I want to talk about before we get into the discussion itself. Because remember a few months ago, I did a video on how Capturing Christianity now has reached the end of its era. It is now completely exposed itself to be a grifter, to be someone who apparently is not very good at critically thinking anymore, very low tier sorts of argumentation. And I got a lot of hate from Catholics on this. But what I'm saying here should not be controversial to anyone who considers themselves a Christian, okay? So, yes, I will stand right where I sit very firmly, and I'll be very happy that I'm sitting here. But if you actually go to this debate, what you're going to see, and I'm going to pull it up right here, what you're going to see is something that is actually a huge problem. Because what we see is sorry, someone's blown up my phone. I'm going to quickly put this on silent. This is what happens. I know I'm early on my stream, by the way, guys, but I decided to do this early because my lunch plans got canceled. Anyway, and the 4th is tomorrow, so happy Independence Day to all of you. But here's one of the things that we're seeing when it comes to this debate here is Cameron has continually responded to expose Jay Dyer. He even has a video up exposing Jay Dyer, and basically talking about how Jay Dyer is the problem. But then Dr. Trent Doherty behaves miserably in this debate. He behaves poorly, talking over people constantly, laughing at them continually. And then there's people who actually want to support this. No, I'm not a Jay Dyer fanboy by any stretch of the imagination, but it was not a good debate. But to obviously show your bias just because you're Catholic tells me the fact that you have lost all intellectual integrity. And by the way, guys, this is your brain on Catholicism, apparently, that when you outsource your thinking to it all. That's all that this is proving, that why people can't be Catholic. And if you're a Catholic, then you should be repudiating this and pushing back. Okay. You should be pushing back against this. But I just have a couple timestamps. I want you guys to just watch this. And so they're arguing about whether or not they are different, whether or not Christian and Muslims worship the same God, I should say. Sorry. I'm having a brain fart right now, just having an absolute stroke at the moment. But listen to this. Listen to how Jay Dyer behaved himself.
Worshipped as a demon.
Not Jay Dyer, Trent Doherty.
And as the true God at the same time. You already made a
No, nobody ever said that. Nobody
Yes,
ever
you
said
did.
that.
The tape on that.
Flag the tape
both.
on that. I'll
You
give you
said both.
$1,000. I'll give you $1,000 if you can find that on the tape. $1,000.
You said
Didn't
it was
have it.
both. You said it was both. You said
I said
that
an individual. I said an individual, like the Jews at times, could worship both the true God and a demon. And therefore, it is not the case that X
So it's
worships
not
a demon
the- it's not-
entails
that-
X
that
doesn't
worship
worship
doesn't
God.
get you
It's
anywhere.
pure logic.
That worship
It's
doesn't
pure
get
logic.
you anywhere.
Learn it.
I'm
Take
not
a class.
arguing the logic. I'm arguing your dogmatic
I know you're not
contradiction.
arguing because it takes
your
logic
dogmas
to argue.
contradict?
That's why you're
Do
not
your
arguing.
dogmas contradict? Do your
Jay, can I
dogmas
just
contradict?
ask? Jay, can I just ask what you mean by it doesn't get you anywhere? What do you mean by that?
I argue that Vatican II's teachings contradict previous teachings. That's my argument.
No, just what do you mean by it doesn't get you anywhere?
No,
I just
that is
know what
my
that means.
argument. It doesn't. There's no salvific acceptance of God in that relationship.
Well, that's
Who
what we
cares?
think. That's what we think.
completely beside the point of the.
It's
of
not
the
beside the
resolution.
point. My argument is that Vatican II contradicts the previous dogmas. That's my argument. That's what I came to argue.
What
If
does
you
that
want
argument have to do with the resolution of the debate and the title of the debate? I don't.
Worship and
doing?
adoration that is accepted by God is what I'm arguing about. So you can argue something else, but who cares about
Well,
that?
then,
My point is that
then you're on
my
the,
point, listen,
then you're
you
on
want
the
me to
whole
make the
channel.
point with? Can I put my slide back up to make why I'm making this point?
What's unique about
So what you see here, I'm going to quickly mute this. So you notice that Trent is speaking over him the entire time, right? By the way, guys, I'm literally throwing this together because I threw it together today because I just couldn't believe the fact that this was like actually going on. So you see Trent is like, I'll give you $1,000. I'll give you $1,000, like completely losing his absolute marbles over this. And then saying that, oh, well, the Israelites could worship demons and the one true God at the same time. Is that a position you want to take, that you could apparently do both? Because apparently, because you can't actually worship the one true God in spirit and in truth. You can't actually worship him proper if you worship demons at the same time. That's why God continually judged ancient Israel, because whenever they did that, he called it idolatry. He said they were making horrors of themselves, to quote the biblical text. He said they had been unfaithful to the covenant. That doesn't sound like worship to me, that God is being worshiped in that sense. But now let's go ahead and move forward a little bit here and just see him bring up the money thing again.
Papacy isn't a religion, bro.
You're the clown, dude. Your pups are praying in
Yeah,
mosques and
no, I'm
synagogues.
laughing. All right. I'll pay you $100 if you can give me a syllogism on the spot
You
right
got
now.
fired for a sex scandal. You don't have $100 to pay out.
I love how Christopher and I raise our hands. Here, where are they at? Here's the hand.
Let's hear from those guys for a while.
Christopher, you want to go first, and I just want to wait and ask some other questions. But go ahead.
Okay.
Shoot.
So this is why.
Anyway, so that's that part of this. I want you guys to have this in your mind, okay? Then after that, what we have is, even, by the way, I should mention this. Trent even pulls up like $1,000 and fans them up in front of the camera, like flaunting the money. It is absolutely just like the most unhinged crash out I've ever seen in my life. But it gets even wilder. What if I told you that Trent Doherty even threatens Jay Dyer? Now, again, not a Jay Dyer fanboy. I think they're both acting really obnoxious in this entire thing. But this is going to become really important as we talk about Cameron at Capturing Christianity, okay? So we're going to pull this up again. And I want you guys to note what happens here. I'm going to go to a timestamp, and then I'm going to break down some of the other arguments here in a minute. But unfortunately, I did not get to download this video in advance, so you just get to deal with it this way. So now they start arguing about whether or not they're even arguing about the same things. Like, hey, I was under the impression this was what the debate topic was. Well, this was what I was under was. So you have Jay who's showing the text from Cameron and back and forth and all this, but notice what Trent does here
About that. So no,
Yeah.
I don't think it
Yeah.
fits exactly into something like the present King of France is bald.
Well, because I am interested in, semantic theories, because I do think that it's a good research, even though I'm probably not going to like change my mind, but I do think there's a difference between what I'm tempted to believe and what I think is a reasonable, research program. Have you read Thomas Brogardis's stuff on Evans's reference drift
What does
in
that say
relation to
right there?
this
What does that say to
topic.
Cameron, by the way?
Good God.
Is
Can we
Dr.
mute this
Trent
clown? What a
is Dr. Trent okay
Cameron,
with discussing
can I
dogmatic
call
teaching?
him?
That's what the text
Can
says.
I
Yeah, he wants me to be muted
I
because he
call
won't. Because I asked Cameron this
where
question
do
right
you
there in the
where
comments.
what state are you in, Jay? Jay, what state are you in?
I'm not doxing myself to your idiot ass. Shut up.
Well, I can't find you by knowing what state you're in. I want to know
I'm
how
not
far
giving
it would
you.
be
You
to
don't need to know
travel.
anything about me. You don't need to know anything about
All
me.
right,
Would you be
Jay,
willing
no,
to travel to Texas?
Jay, I said that we did
I'm not
Would you be
discuss
willing to
that.
travel to Texas?
I'm not meeting you in
Would you
person.
be
Are
willing to
crazy?
travel to Texas if I paid
No,
for it?
I'm not going anywhere near your ass. Are you serious?
Do you have any boxing
All right.
experience or
So you want to
mixed
fight?
Let's
martial
not.
arts or anything
Hey,
like
let's
that?
not. Let's
So
not
this guy
do that.
wants to fight.
Let's try to stick to arguments. Let's try to stick to the
No,
debate
he
topic.
doesn't. So I
I'm
asked specific. Look in the DMs. The DMs. I asked specifically that Dr. Trent talk about magisterial statements. Cameron, you saw that I put up.
So now he wants to talk about magisterial statements and all that. Now, did you guys catch that? He wants to throw down apparently with Jay Dyer about boxing and mixed martial arts. Okay, so that is like wild, unhinged, crash out kind of behavior in a debate. Where do you live, bro? We're going to take it outside. What? It's literally just the most unhinged stuff I've ever seen in a debate in a long time, since like Matt Dillahunty did a full crash out after Andrew Wilson. This is like the next greatest thing that's happened since. And here's what is absolutely mind numbing to anyone who knows anything. The fact that means, so Jay Dyer, of course, wasn't behaving very well, but Trent Doherty, of course, was behaving very well, which means if you were an objective, content creator, you would be saying, hey, I had these guys on, this debate didn't go according to plan, so please forgive all parties involved. I'll do my best to try to keep my people under control or whatever. Or if nothing else, I'll say, yeah, they behaved like a bunch of monkeys and whatever, it is what it is. But instead, what Cameron does, because Dr. Doherty is a Catholic, he only goes after Jay Dyer. Now, Trent threatens him, right? He wants to go and fight him physically. He is going, oh, I'll pay $1,000 if you do it right now, talking over people, yelling, laughing, mocking, and only Jay Dyer gets called out? Are you serious? Jay didn't act nearly as unhinged in this as Trent did. And yet Cameron only continually has been calling out Jay. He has a video exposing Jay Dyer. He didn't do that with Trent. Doherty, he didn't say exposing Trent. In fact, he's had Trent on since this debate to discuss this sort of thing. So he's showing the fact that he is completely biased. This is his brain on Catholicism. He has now officially left reason and only entered into group think, and whatever the whole group is saying, then therefore I must do the same. That is a major problem. And this is why I said months ago, people just need to stop following Capturing Christianity, because it is going completely down to the dumpster. And everything I've said so far about that has been correct up to this point. So yeah, and if you want proof of that, look no further than, I'm just going to share my screen with you guys. I'm going to pull up X here so you can see Cameron's account, and they're talking about, don't worry, we're going to break down the arguments on how they are not the same God here shortly, but I just want you guys to get a little bit of this background here. So if you scroll down here, let's see, it was down here somewhere. Sorry, there's a few things going on. So yeah, it's over right here talking about how they were arguing. So there you go. You have them on there again. If it's true. Oh yeah. And then of course he keeps going after Andrew Wilson, even though Andrew Wilson's actually right on this. And where is it? I'm sorry, guys. Why does everyone assume? Oh yeah, right you go. So quick update. I found the original quote. No, that's not it. Where is it? I just had it like 2 seconds ago. Now it's gone. Well, I don't know why I'm doing it this way. When I have easier technology and features that actually will help me find it. There you go. So 100,000 people have watched Jay Dyer, but all but concede that Christians and Muslims can worship the same God. So Cameron's doing that. Again, Jay would have discovered all this had he done research than a 5-minute search on Bing. So of course, Cameron's being cocky and snarky, which is whatever. How? Oh yeah, right here. Does Pope Urban II say Muslims worship demons? Jay Dyer says yes. Vatican II says no. So I trace the original quote. So again, he keeps just going after Jay Dyer, but he has never once. Again, so I point out that Jay made an embarrassing historical blunder where I cite actual historical source material, and his only response is to call me a sophist. Here's the link to the original thread exposing Jay's shallow research. So again, Jay after Jay, going after Jay. See all this right here. J. Not once calling out Trent. Cameron has become a joke. An absolute joke. If this happened any other time before any of this, he would have actually made a statement of some sort and condemned both of their behavior. You have a guy who's threatening to go to someone's house and fight them on your channel, which, by the way, could we get a new show of like MMA with theologians? That would be fun. That'd be masculine and awesome. But you have a guy making threats like that on there, and you don't call him out. You just keep going after Jay Dyer. He even does like a whole Jay Jay Dyer exposed thing. But this gets even more embarrassing if you go even further. Okay, so let's look at this even more so. All right. So Capturing Christianity then has recently posted how Acts 22 teaches that Christians and Muslims can worship the same God. This is what he says. Acts 22. Does Acts settle I told you guys I'm having a stroke today. Does Acts 22 settle the same God debate? In Acts 22:3, Paul tells a hostile crowd that before he became a Christian, he was zealous for God. Think about that. At the time, Paul rejected Jesus as Lord, persecuted the church, and approved Stephen's murder, and yet he still says with no apology that he was zealous for God. Not a false God, not a different God, God. In context, Paul is talking to other Jews who also rejected Jesus and persecuted Christians. And yet, Paul doesn't say, back when I worshiped a different God, he says, I was like you, zealous for God. They all directed their worship to the God of Abraham, even while embracing views that contradict the core of Christianity. To be clear, this doesn't mean that doctrine doesn't matter. Paul still needed to convert. His Christology was wrong, but the reference of his worship hadn't changed. He wasn't worshiping a different God. He was just wrong, dangerously wrong about the one true God. If that's possible for Paul, then it's possible for Muslims today. And unless you're prepared to say Paul worshiped a false God before Damascus, the different God argument just doesn't hold up. It's not enough to say Muslims deny the Trinity. Paul rejected Christ. So did his audience in Acts 22. Yet he still says they were zealous for God. Let that sink in. I cannot tell you how incredibly stupid this argument is. And I'm just going to speak very frankly with this. Very stupid. Because one, you're trying to apply this to Islam, which is wild. Christianity is an extension of Judaism. It is not an extension of Islam, and Islam is not an extension of Judaism or Christianity. Judaism and Christianity are actually directly linked. Islam is not. So you already don't get this off the ground as far as I am aware here. The other issue is audience and context matter. He's talking to Jews as a Jew, talking about God in general. But also he knows that God has been revealed through Jesus Christ. So God is different than what these people have thought. In fact, my friend Chris said this. He posted, he just keeps making it worse. Cameron, Acts 22 is not a parallel to the question of if Muslims worship the same God. You even give the reason why in your post. Paul is talking to other Jews. Of course, they were worshiping the same God as Christians. That's because the Old and New Testaments agree on who God is and what he is like. They just hadn't begun worshiping him in spirit and in truth. What God do you think Jesus is the incarnation of? Of course, the God of the Old Testament. Christians today are not Marcionites. For your argument to work, you'd have to argue that Allah fundamentally agrees with Old Testament portrait of God, and such a position is indefensible. Compare with Allah, the situations are not comparable in the slightest, because Muslims reject things that Second Temple Jews accepted. Things such as multiple persons being God. You say it's not enough to say Muslims deny the Trinity. Yes, it is. It is enough to say that Muslims worship a unitary tribal moon god rather than the triune creator of the universe. Ordinarily, I would recommend some resources for you to look into on this point, because you are so confused, but I don't believe you have the humility to accept it. And I think Chris puts it perfectly. There is actual evidence of early Jews who actually believed that there were two powers in heaven, for example, that God could possibly be in persons based on different things that happened in the Old Testament, like the different people revealed to some of the prophets and stuff. They already had talked about this. And then it says that the word became flesh. The incarnation, the triunity you were talking about there, is an incarnation of who? The Jewish God, not Islam. Plus, the Muslim God is wildly impersonal. He is wildly impersonal. And we're going to talk about that here in a minute. Also, he's not triune. And even then, they don't believe Jesus rose from the dead. They don't believe Jesus is God incarnate. They don't believe that God even loves all people, but that all things are determined. And they also believe that their God has demanded a jihad on all unbelievers. These are not the same God. You can have the same word with a very, very, very different dictionary. And you can't put them side by side and think that they're the exact same thing. It's just untenable. It is absolutely ridiculous for anyone to think that. So anyway, all right. I am loving Will's energy. This gets me all sorts of miffed. So you guys have no idea, like Islam, I believe, is probably the most dangerous religion on the planet. And to say that we worship the same God when we are a peace-loving religion, that Christianity thrived in peace, that during all these different things, it was always supposed to be a religion of peace. And then to say we worship the same God as Islam, I'm like, no. That is absolutely not true. So anyway, let's go ahead and start actually breaking down some of the argumentation that they use in the debate. And I'm going to just take this and go scorched earth on it. Okay. So I'm glad people are liking my energy right now, because we are not done with it yet. All right. Let me pull it up. All right. Share screen. I'm just going to pull up the screenshots I sent to myself. All right. Be a Christian YouTuber, they said. It would be fun, they said. All right. Instead, just stresses me out. So these are the arguments that Trent Doherty said. And Cameron, we can go to his X account, or you can go to it yourself. He's posting these regularly, saying that they are valid arguments. These are awful arguments to think that they somehow prove that Christians and Muslims worship the same God. And remember, it's Catholic Christians, Catholics who say that, and many of them believe that if you are not baptized in the church, you're not saved, right? Like if you're not part of the Catholic Church, you're not part of the one true church, because you don't acknowledge the authority of the one true church. And they're even like, well, we don't believe that they're saved, but that they're, confused and they just worship the same God. I don't even know how you even square that circle, by the way. And I know someone's gonna be like, you should research it. No, it's a bad argument. You can't sit there and kick out Protestants left and right, and some of your Orthodox brothers and sisters. You can't sit there and kick all these people out due to your magisterial teachings and then claim somehow that you guys worship the same God. It's like, wow. Just anyway. All right. Argument one. This is what we call the semantic argument. Premise one, if the Quran originated in the context of furthering the biblical narrative, then its terms pick up their reference from the biblical narrative. Every reasonable semantic theory. Premise two, the Quran originated in the context of furthering the biblical narrative. Historical facts. QED. Now, so evidently, if the Quran presents itself as continuing the biblical narrative, so then it must be talking about the same God, because the God in the Bible refers to God, and therefore the Quran talking about God must be using the same dictionary. This is absolutely not true, because just because it can present itself as continuing the biblical narrative doesn't mean it is continuing the biblical narrative, nor does it mean that they're using the same working definitions. If you reject Mormons as being Christians, which you should, then you look at it and go, why? Because they have redefined what God even is on that paradigm. Same with Jehovah's Witnesses. They redefine who the incarnation is and the resurrection. Core Christian teachings, the things that actually are unique to Christianity and Christians and our Christian God. And you're over here saying that just because it uses the same word to continue the narrative, that somehow means they're the same God? No. And let me go ahead and break this down, okay? So First off, historical context. I'm going to look at my notes over here. So if you see me looking away from the screen, don't worry, live chat. Oh, also, if you have super chats, go ahead and start plugging those too. If you have questions, put question like in caps and then ask your question. I'll start for later. Historical context does not equal identical reference. Okay. So the Quran does indeed situate itself, of course, in relation to biblical figures, right? It talks about Abraham, it talks about Moses, it talks about even Jesus, even though it doesn't believe that Jesus was crucified through Roman crucifixion in the same way, nor that he resurrected, but presents him as a prophet, and that apparently everyone else and all other historical facts are around that are wrong, and it must be the right one. Anyhow, but it radically reinterprets them. So Islam denies core truths of the Christian narrative, right? That Jesus is God incarnate, that the crucifixion, the resurrection, that's part of the Christian God. Also, of course, they deny the Trinity. Anyway, but simply claiming a continuation does not mean it accepts the same God. It reshapes the identity of God fundamentally into a jihadist, deterministic God. Also, reference is determined not only by intention, right? That they intended to continue the narrative. Reference is not determined only by intention, but by the actual description and the attributes predicated of the subject. So in other words, to put this in normal person's terminology, the intention doesn't matter. What does matter is the description, how it's described, and the attributes of him, or in other words, the character of that God. And the character of the Muslim God is different than the character of the Christian God. Could you imagine going back to the Crusades and looking at the Christians who are dying in the Crusades and fighting Muslims like, oh, you guys worship the same God? How do you think that's going to go? Do you think the knights are just going to be like, oh, you're right, let's just parlay with them? No, because as many have pointed out, the God of Islam is demonic. I'm probably going to get canceled for this video. It's fine. Anyway, in Christianity, God is triune, right? He's Father, Son, and Spirit. He's personal, and he entered history in Jesus Christ, and he resurrected from the dead. And what's funny is that a lot of these people would say that Unitarians aren't even saved, but Unitarians at least believe that Jesus resurrected from the grave bodily, which means they are far closer to Christianity than anything Islam is. And yeah, you guys will kick them out of the kingdom. It's just wild to me, like the amazing double standards that are everywhere in this debate right now. Like, Islam is about as far away from the Christian God as you could get before you enter like polytheism and paganism. Okay. Like it might be monotheistic. That's about it. That's about your similarity there. And they have kosher kind of eating laws, right? So in Islam, God, who is Allah, right? Allah is just their word, is Arabic just for God as a general whole. God is strictly what we would call Unitarian, and it denies any incarnation or sonship. In fact, the even idea of God becoming man, they think is like an insult to God. And then also him dying out of love for humanity, also something that they think is absolutely heinous. Thus, even terms like God or Allah and those sort of things are linguistically linked, but they do not refer to the same entity because they are incompatible core. They have incompatible core attributes. They are different gods, period. It's not that complicated, guys. It's not that deep. It's not that deep. It just isn't. So, all right, let me go before we go on to argument 2. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit to you guys in the chat, just because I want to see how this works. Because the next argument is even worse. Brando says, if this argument goes through for Cameron, I don't think he realizes how many other arguments he has made that don't go through anymore because of it. Exactly. I remember a guy called Alberto Rivera, ex-Jesuit, who said the Vatican created Islam. Now, where Catholics actually defend Islam, I think Alberto Rivera probably said the truth. Yeah, and exactly. Good Short says it tries to change the biblical narrative, not further it. Exactly. And Nathan, question, he says, do you think modern Jews and Christians worship the same God? No, I don't think they probably worship the same God. Question, isn't a God who tortures sinners forever and never ends the rebellion against seem like a radically different God from one in scripture? Yes, and I see where you're going there. Idol Killer. By the way, go subscribe to him. He says, Will, did you see my 8 arguments against their claims? I posted on X and Facebook. I did not, but you know, the best part about it is I'm logged into X right now. So what I'll do is I will pull you up and we will go into that here in a little bit. I'll just read them for the crowd. So everyone's sticker. Oh gosh, he actually literally does. That's the first thing he's recently posted. We'll go there here shortly after I do my dismantling of these arguments. So, okay. Let's see. Jamie says, I mean, the Trinity matters, but I think God would rather have you not understand the Trinity than deny his promise to end the rebellion and tell people he tortures his enemies forever. Yeah. I mean, I would agree with that. Like, I mean, I think the Trinity was something that was obviously a revelation, but I don't think that that is something that's like, if someone denies the Trinity, like, or doesn't understand the Trinity, let's put it that way. They don't understand the Trinity. That's one thing, but outright denying it or any of the teachings of core teachings of Christianity, like Islam, no, they're not the same thing. It's not enough to be monotheistic. Amber says, I challenge the premise that you can put this in normal language. That presumes that you are normal, and that that is a denial of reality. So would it be accurate to say they are referring to the same being, as in the being whom Abraham worshipped, but not the same G, like God, small g, intentional? I don't think it would be, because I think the being is totally different. I think the attributes of and the character of that being matter, and the attributes of that being are radically different between Islam and Christianity. Sean Beachy continues another question. Would it be accurate to say they're referring to the same? Oh, you already put that on there. Okay, yeah, cool. Yes, Pascal Flowers. Whoever doesn't have the Son doesn't have the Father. Bingo. Alrighty, let's go now. Let's look at argument 2, because this one is arguably worse. Argument 2, the disagreement argument. Premise 1. Islam and Christianity disagree only if they are referring to the same entities, predicating properties of the same subject. Premise 2. Islam and Christianity disagree. QED. So apparently, if you're monotheistic and you disagree on things, it means you're arguing about the same God. Does anyone else see the problem here? Anyone? No, we're disagreeing because we're arguing for totally different characters and beings. My God loves the world. My God humbled himself and became a man and died on the cross and rose again to save humanity. Your God is static. He is impersonal. He has determined all things. He's deterministic, okay, entirely, like hardcore determinism. And he's also commanded the murder of all people who don't convert and believe. Yeah, no, not the same thing. Not the same God. But let's go ahead and break this down. Let's talk about why this argument fails. First off, you can only meaningfully disagree about properties of the same entity, apparently, if you are talking about the same thing. But the key is, do they actually refer to the same thing to begin with? Okay, if you guys are talking about the same being, great, but you're not, because Christianity says God is triune, that God became incarnate, that God loves the entire world, that God, he's a loving father, he's personal, you can get to know him, we live in an indeterministic universe, all those sorts of things. Islam says also God is not triune, that he would never become personal, that he would never dwell among us, that he wouldn't die for people. These are not just different predicates. These are mutually exclusive core identities to what we're talking about. Not all disagreements implied share reference either. They just don't. For example, they use a Superman analogy in this, so I'm going to continue the Superman analogy. Person A says Superman can fly, and person B says Clark Kent cannot fly. They might appear to disagree, but if person B doesn't think Clark Kent is Superman, they are not referring to the same entity. Similarly, if Islam denies God's triune nature, or the incarnation, or the resurrection, or that God loves all people, they're not actually referring to the same being, even if using the same word God or Allah. Hope that makes sense. Because if somebody says that Clark Kent can't fly, they don't think that they're referring to Superman. So if they're saying that God believes that they should commit a jihad on all unbelievers, or that it's okay to marry little girls, or, you know, as Dr. David Wood has pointed out, even suck the tongue on little boys, which is disgusting. If those are the things that Islam says is okay, and the God of Christianity is not, then you're referring to vastly different beings. Vastly different beings. It's not enough for you just to call him God. Okay. God's a title. And there's a lot of people who have come up with this idea of a God. Okay. The question is whether your God's the true God, whether or not your God has the right characters, the right attributes, and all those things. I remember George W. Bush also said that we worship the same God, and it was just absolutely astounding that happened. Anyway, so another thing is a different identity criteria. In philosophy of religion, reference to God depends on core identity defining attributes. Even things like aseity, Trinity, incarnation, all those things are all part of what makes that God God, how they are different gods. The Islamic Allah lacks those defining attributes and explicitly denies them, meaning he cannot be identical to the Christian God. Period. So you could try your little ecumenicalism, even though you guys kick out people all the time who are actual Christians. You could try this, but it's not going to get you anywhere. So, anyway, no, this wouldn't make Jehovah's Witnesses Christian. As I mentioned, that's because, so one of the big things with with Jehovah's Witnesses, the reason why I think you cannot call them Christian is because they actually do not believe in the bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ. Not only because they deny Jesus's deity, even though I think that's a core teaching of Christianity. I think the identity, that Christology was highly debated, and there's a lot, and even nowadays we have different models even of the Trinity itself. So I don't think one has to necessarily have the perfect understanding of Jesus's ontology to be considered necessarily Christian, but you do have to believe Jesus arose bodily from the dead, and Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe that at all. First Corinthians 15 makes very clear what the gospel is, and Jesus Christ being risen from the dead has to be it. So, all right. Council of Trent channel from an hour ago is a better steelman of the Catholic position. The debate on capturing Christianity was a dumpster fire. Yeah, it was a dumpster fire, but even then, I don't, anyone who argues that Christians and Muslims are worship the same God, no. No. I could hear, you could give me the most sophisticated arguments in the world, and the answer for me will still be no. I see what people, why people try to get there. I just don't think you can get there. No, actually, because Warren was in the chat, he said that he made multiple arguments on his X account regarding this. So let's just go ahead and look at them. I haven't looked at these yet. This was not part of my show. So what my original notes. So let's look at them. So argument 1, oppositional origin of the Quran. So if the Quran originated in opposition to the biblical narrative, then its terms God and Jesus do not refer to the same beings in the Bible. Premise 2, the Quran originated in opposition to the biblical narrative, seeking to replace it. Conclusion, therefore, the Quran's terms do not refer to the same beings as in the Bible. Thank you, Warren. We said this earlier, just not in a premise, conclusion. It's not presented itself just as a continuation of the biblical narrative, but it actually is rewriting it, right? Argument 2, contradictory essential attributes. If two beings have contradictory essential attributes, they cannot be the same being. A good example of this would be if I am a God of love and someone is a God of hate. They cannot be the same being. Or if I am a temporal being and God is an eternal being, then we cannot be the same being. That's what it's saying. The attributes are different. The Christian God is triune, eternally relational, incarnate, and truthful. The Islamic Allah is absolutely one, Tawhid, and denies internal relations. As I said, it is also not personable, denies incarnation, and is described as a deceiver. Because remember, he's also deterministic. That means there is no free will, really. All things are determined. That means God has determined the unbelievers as well as the believers. And therefore, he's given me, as a Christian, Allah has given me false beliefs that Christianity is true. So therefore, he's a deceiver, okay? He's deceived me into thinking Christianity is true and not him. And then he has commanded that I be killed in the jihad anyway. Conclusion, therefore, the Christian God and the Islamic Allah are not the same being. Argument 3, anyone who denies the Son does not have the Father. Islam denies that Jesus is Son of God. Therefore, Islam does not worship or know the Father. Hence, the same God as Christians. Coming forward, these are really good, Warren. Thank you. You're basically saying what I was saying, but in premise, conclusion, but I love that. Argument 4, shared labels do not guarantee shared reference. Using the same term God or Jesus does not entail referring to the same being if the definitions differ essentially. Christians and Muslims both use the term God and Jesus, but define them in contradictory ways. Therefore, Christians and Muslims do not refer to the same God or Jesus. Exactly. Two people can't make two opposing propositions and both be right. One has to be wrong or both of them are wrong, right? All right. To quote Dr. Trent Doherty, it's logic, man. It's logic. Just learn it. Anyway, argument 5, monotheism does not establish shared identity. Monotheism is a broad category that includes different and incompatible conceptions of God. Premise 2, Christianity and Islam, while both monotheistic, hold incompatible conceptions of God's nature, character, and revelation. Therefore, shared monotheism does not entail worship of the same God. Man, these are good. All right. Character incompatibility. I know where you're going. If two beings have incompatible moral characters and relational natures, they do not have the same being. The Christian God is loving, self-giving, humble, truthful, and desires all to be saved. The Islamic Allah is not intrinsically loving, not relational, not self-giving, and is described as a deceptive and arbitrary being. Therefore, the Christian God and Islamic Allah are not the same being. Argument 7, the ship of Theseus and identity replacement. Ooh, this will be fun. If all essential properties of a being are removed and replaced, the result is a different being, not the same one. Islam removes and replaces the essential properties of the Christian God: Trinity, sonship, incarnation, atonement, etc. Therefore, Islam does not worship the same God as Christianity. I think that's all that for that one, and we'll go down here. Oh my gosh, there's so many. Oh, I think that was what yeah, the character incompatible. Okay, I did that. All right, here we go. Blasphemy and inversion argument. The criteria for blasphemy in any religion are grounded in the revealed identity and nature of his deity. Islam considers the affirmation of Jesus' divinity a blasphemous denial of Allah's oneness. Christianity considers denial of Jesus' divinity a blasphemous rejection of God's self-revelation. Since each religion defines blasphemy in terms that contradict the other's conception of God, they do not refer to the same deity. Wow, okay. Well, I don't know where the rest of yours are, but I am with you on that. Now let's quickly let's go take a gander one more time and look at Capturing Christianity's X page, guys. Let's go to this side of the internet. It helps if I could type. Good grief. So again, and what is he doing here? Continually arguing that they worship the same God. Right here, once again. He's posting those arguments that you saw me have up. He even says that here, Dr. Craig gives a fantastic reason to think that Islam is false. But notice, his argument only works if God in the Quran refers to the same God. Want to know why? See the next post. The debate, oh, then it's up here, I guess, the next post. And then the disagreement argument. The disagreement argument is so trash. It's like, yeah, because we disagree, therefore it must be shared. I thought you said 15 for some reason. I don't know. So just 8. Still, they is exactly. It doesn't come down for me. It doesn't come down with so much as the language of the premise of the debate. I think it comes down to the very natures of the gods we're talking about. So anyway, do Muslims and Christians worship the same God? No, we do not. They are vastly different. And anyone who says otherwise is, I would argue, very foolish. And we have nothing in common with Islam as far as I'm concerned. There is the only thing that we have in common really is monotheism. Okay, that's about it. So yes, that's about it. Oh, sorry. This just got this. I was watching all this morning and it got me all sorts of worked up just because it's like, are you serious? And by the way, I want you guys to note something about Capturing Christianity. Cameron is one of the biggest quote unquote Christian YouTubers as well. And with, let's see here, 376,000 subscribers. That means 376,000 people subbed that he can influence to believe this. To believe blasphemous drivel that our God is the same God that they worship. The one who apparently asks for jihad, is okay with pedophilia, and a number of other things. Not the same God. And the fact that you'd say that makes me really question a lot of things. But remember what I said a long time ago? I was right. I don't normally say this. I'm not normally like this on the channel, but I was right. I called it. I saw this a year ago that Capturing Christianity was going downhill in a downward spiral really fast. And you'll notice in that debate, by the way, the Catholics really didn't want to talk about Vatican II and Vatican I and all the different magisterial teachings of the Catholic Church, because they were like, oh, they kept wanting to separate that from that as Catholics. Like, no. Well, that has nothing to do with the debate. It has a lot to do with the debate as Catholics, because they are trying to get down to the double standard. Like, say what you want about Jay Dyer, but he's trying to get down to the double standard of this. Like, this is what you guys say in these these different documents about God, and then you're going to say that this God is the same God. Are you serious? So that is part of what is going on here. So let's see. Does anyone have any questions? This might be a short live stream because I have other things. Make Islam Catholic again. Oh, that is hilarious, Nick. I love you. So their Jesus wasn't the Son of God and didn't rise from the dead. Different Jesus equals different God. Case closed. Sounds pretty airtight to me. Like, if you can't even believe Jesus raised from the dead, then you don't worship the same God. Period. So yeah. Wow. Really? Wrong names? And then you're going to sit there and say Jesus is dumb. God is the most highest. Okay, so we have more blasphemous drivel. Hello, heretic, in the comments. So all right, Jesus is God and he is Yahweh, so deal with it. All right, so wow. All right, well, you never know what you're gonna get, guys. It's the internet. So anyway, yeah, so you have Cameron ardently arguing that they worship the same God, not backing down from it, not taking correction whatsoever. They're all avoiding magisterial teachings because it exposes the difference. And so all I can say is that apparently this is your brain on Catholicism. And let's see, Delish says your God is triune. If you point to a non-triune God and say that's your God, you are either a liar or an apostate. Thank you. If you are a Trinitarian, then that's what your view of God is. Trinitarian. And again, I'll say it, like, Unitarians, we have far more in common with Unitarians than we have Islam. And yet many people would even say that Unitarians don't worship the same God because they don't believe Jesus is God incarnate. And some of them do in a different kind of way. The Unitarian group gets complicated. But point is like, if you guys are going to sit there and say that they don't worship the same God, because they would say that if you don't believe Jesus is God, and I would largely agree with this, then you believe that Jesus is a different person. You're worshiping a different Jesus, right? Or you are looking to a different Jesus, because Jesus is the Jesus that Christians believe in is God. Well, if you're going to make that argument, that just because that even if you don't even see him as the incarnate God of the word that becomes flesh and dwelt among us and all those things, and you would say that's a different Jesus, then how much more should Allah of Islam be considered a different God? Anyway, Idol Killer says, will your popes kiss the Quran, worship in mosques, and say the Holy Spirit works through the truth and doctrines of demons to convert people unknowingly to Christians who actively oppose Christ? You've surrendered Christianity. It's been captured. Ooh, there's a good line. So yeah, that's it. What's up, Josh? Oh, by the way, go to Behind the Curtain. Look up Behind the Curtain, Josh and Ryan. There's a few other channels behind the curtain, but I was on their channel. They just dropped an episode where we talked about atonement for a little while, and it was a really, really good guys. So anyway, that's that. I wanted to get this out there. Does anyone have any other questions real fast? I'm going to watch the chat for a few minutes here, just try to chat and all that. But if there's nothing going on, then I will go ahead and end the stream early. And get rolling because tomorrow is the 4th of July. And for all you people who are not Americans, I pray freedom finds you and that you will also hear the call of our liberty from all the way across the pond. Canadians, hello. So sorry for you. But tomorrow's the 4th, so I'm going to be grilling out. And if I could get started on, get my workout in and get started on my holiday weekend, I am so here for it. So, all right. What does anyone else have a question? All right. When are you going to get back to me about scheduling that collab? The good question, Amber. Lots going on. But we can definitely still do it. Hopefully during the day. I'm having to slow down my collabs in general just because I've been inculcated with them. And I'm just trying to like kind of get them through just because working on my master's. I also recently, I will be teaching part-time at our local Christian academy. I'll be teaching middle school and high school Bible, along with my normal day job and being all the other stuff. So I have to like, I'm starting to have to be very careful with my time blocks. And I can do it all. I just need to make sure I'm very strict with my time blocks. I've been told by quite a few people that I take on too much, which is sometimes true, but also I think some people are more capable of doing more than they think. You just need to be really disciplined with your time. So anyway, so one thing everyone probably needs to work on is stop calling anyone in a Roman church a Catholic. Their delusional minds think they're calling them the one true church. So start calling Roman Catholics or Roman Church the Roman Church. Oh, yeah, because I'm pretty. Steve, I want to know if you're pretty. But also, yes. So actually, last week I did do 2 collabs, even though I said I need to slow down. One was Behind the Curtain, and they posted that on Monday, Behind the Curtain with Josh and Ryan. But also, Amber and Steve here from Floral from Under a Rock, or Church Under a Rock, had me on to discuss Once Saved, Always Saved. You can find that on his channel as well. However, you won't just find that on his channel. Let me go ahead and tell you. So he doesn't just do these skits, but the skit will be fun as you guys have questions or super chats. And you guys want to start putting those in now. If you guys want to start doing those, that's great. However, I do want to show you, he did this little commercial for me when I was releasing my book, and I want to start using it in the middle just for funsies of random videos. So ready, guys? 3, 2, 1.
Hey, Floral, guess what?
What?
I heard there's this great book on atonement by Will Hess, so I thought maybe this theory could pan out.
Really? Well, I didn't know that you were into that kind of thing.
You kidding? It only cost me like $1.50 for a bag.
Wait, huh?
A bag of mints. And then I opened it up, and sure enough, I found it. Can you hear it? It's atonement.
Okay. You got this all wrong. Will Hess has written a book on atonement called Crushing the Great Serpent. Did God Punish Jesus? He's helping people understand what Jesus' death on the cross accomplished.
Oh, so, there's not supposed to be any singing mints.
No. Not at all.
Oh, that was muted. Somehow I muted that. How long have I been muted? Man. How long have I been muted, y'all? Did it? Mine's like a really touchy mic. It's got this really fancy, like little touch to mute button. And sometimes if you accidentally bump it, it just instantly turns red. and it mutes. So, well, oh, since the amazing animation. Okay, good. All right, so it was just during that. Thanks, good shorts. All right. Woo! All right, so what I was saying is up here when up here when where'd you go? Everyone's, I see you muted now. You guys should have done bigger caps. We should start calling Romanists said, because to call them Catholic reaffirms their delusion. So here's the thing. It's funny you say that, because my brother was over the weekend, and my brother's not a theology nerd by any stretch of the imagination. He is but he is a fitness nerd. Like, he is jacked. I'm pretty sure he could Mortal Kombat finishing move me by punching me through the gut, ripping out my spine, and beating me with it. So anyway, little brother ain't so little no more. And but he kept asking me like church questions. And once I was giving church history, and then once we got to Catholicism and talked about Constantine and all that, and then he was like, wait. So that is when church and government started getting mixed up. And that is probably why it got all corrupt. And I was like, I didn't say it. You did. But yeah, that's pretty much where you're finding. So yeah. Anyway, well, everybody, to be fair, so could your daughter. You're only saying that because my daughter's Korean, and therefore she has like hop keto in her blood. Okay, so she could do that. Actually, she pretty much does that to me every single day when she wakes me up. It just starts jumping all over me. So anyway, well, guys, this has been fun. What do you think? Do Muslims and Christians worship the same God? If the answer is no, congratulations, you are a normal, smart human being who actually can understand the differences between two concepts. If you say yes, I would love for you to demonstrate how, without using poor argumentation, and show me how they are the exact same God, how they can be even considered the same God, when one of them is clearly a murderous monster who determines all things and commands the jihad of all the people he has already determined to not believe, or the one who has lovingly looked at his image bearers, sent his son to die for them, and has destroyed the power of sin, death, and Satan over creation, and is going to inaugurate a new creation with his son ascended to the right hand of the Father. You tell me which one's if they're the same, and which if they're not. You let me know, okay? So anyway, guys, this has been my very, very miffed live stream. I hope it's been enjoyable to you all, and I hope it helps reinforce your 4th of July, that you know what, I do not need to outsource my thinking to the magisterium or the crown. We are free people here, and we could freely think, because apparently once you give it to the magisterium, you have to affirm some really ridiculous things. And when you affirm some really, really ridiculous things, well, we all lose brain cells. So anyway, man, this is way more tongue-in-cheek and aggressive than I probably should be, but whatever. All right, we're guys, hope this was enjoyable for you. I hope you realize that the frustration and anger you hear from this is from a place of you are misrepresenting God, and I don't think it's right, and I think you're going to mislead people, and I think you are enabling people you are confusing things with pluralism. That's what this essentially is. You are confusing Christianity and allowing pluralism in. So let's quickly do a synopsis. God is love. God's love is revealed in Jesus Christ within Christianity. God is a Trinity. God became incarnate in Jesus. That's Christianity. In Islam, God is absolutely one. God is unknowable and cannot be incarnate. And Jesus is only a prophet, not God's son. So these are just terrible argumentations that they've used. The semantic argument wrongly assumes mere narrative connection equals identical frame of reference. And the disagreement argument fails because disagreement requires a shared reference, which is not established, but rather denies by the content of each faith. So, all right, guys. Hope this was fun for you. Take care. Enjoy your holiday if you have a holiday. If you don't have a holiday, I'm sorry you have to go to work tomorrow. And we will catch you guys in the next one. So take care and God bless.